Welcome back to Icons and Circles. So for the second half of the program, we have as our guest Commissioner Heherson Alvarez, who is an icon in the Philippines with regards to climate change. And together with him, we are very privileged to have Mr. Alexander Ochs, who is the Director of Climate and Energy of the Worldwatch Institute. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for guesting at the show and for sharing your expertise with regards to climate change.
Yeah, when it comes to expertise, I yield it to Dr. Ochs. He's a part of that limited number of people all over the world articulating and understanding the destructive impact of climate change. And this Worldwatch Institute is a very old institution. It's been there since 1974. That's right.
Really? Already watching on the climate change?
Yeah.
Climate change, other environmental issues, food security, human development,
but during
gender issues.
Yeah, but during that time, you know, this was like a futuristic view. I mean, already considering the damage being done to Mother Earth.
We understand a lot better what's happening today, and we see it much clearer, unfortunately,
we are experiencing
that the impacts are there.
Right, we're experiencing.
You know, Annette, may I call you Annette?
Yes, please.
In these global conferences, there are many voices that are heard, but there are only a few who really deeply focus and understand the issue. I heard about him from friends who are focused and understand the issue. And so I was curious. In the last conference in Doha, I was in the same panel with him.
Right.
And I think I was not listening to myself. I was just listening to him. You know. Then I asked Executive Office to issue an invitation to bring him over here. And the President very happily issued an invitation for him. And I invited all the relevant departments that have something to do with environment, agriculture, which is always ruined with the typhoons that we have here.
Yes.
And environment, of course, health, and he was our principal guest speaker. And since then, he has allowed himself to share his observations on how we can reduce the use of or the volume of carbon dioxide, which is the culprit in this problem of climate change. So he comes here again to be a speaker leader, because they are divided into different segments in the fora organized by USAID. And he's talking about how to reduce carbon, how to make the Earth more livable and perhaps enable it to survive.
Yeah,
If,
especially
we look
for
at the science
future
report,
generations.
yeah,
Yes.
if we don't do something about this continuing deposit of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, the life on this planet could perish, and not in a very long time. What is the prediction, Dr. Ochs?
I mean, we're not on a very good path to stay below the levels that we need to stay for our ecosystems to adapt to climate change. So climate change at this point can't be prevented. It is happening already. We have warmed already by almost a degree since pre-industrial times, and it is now very clear with the new report by the United Nations that it's human-made, mostly human-made. So this warming effect is going to continue with mostly negative and some relatively serious negative impacts, but we can prevent the worst, and that's really what this is about now. On the one hand, to prevent ecological disaster, not to drive into a wall, open-eyed, and on the other hand, to really use the opportunities that we have. And my understanding is we're also going to have some time to talk about these tremendous opportunities that are really there, particularly for countries like the Philippines.
Yes, yes. I think you're very much into developing a sustainable energy roadmap, you know, for the country, using renewable energy also.
It's helping us draw our roadmap on that,
Yes.
and it's linking us to global institutions so that we will have the right technical package and the right financial management. We can produce, and there are opportunities in the Philippines especially, clean energy, do away less and less of coal, less
Yes.
and less of
Petroleum.
crude oil, yeah,
Crude oil,
and
yes.
its derivatives.
Mhm.
If we do that and we produce clean fuel, ultimately down the line, we can also develop the economy because clean fuel is going to be cheap fuel since
Yes.
we have a lot of those. Don't we, Doctor?
Yeah. Other sources of energy.
So this subject matter has basically all ingredients of a good drama or even a good thriller. If it wasn't so real, you know, if it wasn't the real world we're talking about, one could find a lot of excitement in it. And that thriller is, on the one hand, you have one of the most threatened countries in the world. The Philippines are the #3 most threatened country in the world
Number
by
3.
climate change. And
Number
In ruin.
3.
Yeah.
but then on the other hand, there might be a happy end. And here's the happy end. You know, all countries in the world have good wind resources or good solar resources
Yeah.
or good geothermal resources. But the Philippines have it all.
Have the 3 of them.
They have it all.
All
They have
right.
good hydro in addition to that. They have good ocean technology. So all elements that you can use that are freely available are out there and have much stronger potential in the Philippines than in most other places. So while you're on the one hand very threatened by climate change, you can become a model country really for showing that you know, a different way to power our homes, power our industry,
Yeah, clean energy.
drive,
cleaner
power our
energy.
cars is
Alright.
possible. And that's really the beauty of the story.
Sounds like a fairy tale.
Well, you need to make it happen.
Right,
so
exactly,
like every
yeah.
Story, it's not
Yeah.
over quickly.
Yeah.
It develops over many chapters, and I'm very honored to be invited by Senator Alvarez and the Climate Change Commission and the President of the Philippines to help contribute to write a story with a happy end, rather than one that's only ending in something that is going to be very dramatic and not pretty at all.
And what do you say the third
Most vulnerable.
most vulnerable?
Well, because we are an archipelagic country. We are
Right.
small islands.
Yes.
There are more islands than we thought now because of the recent surveys. And of course, if there's going to be a rising warming of the ocean, we will ruin many of these islands. We will
Right.
flood them. And if there's going to be great storms as we've been having, these storms were on a velocity of about 60, 70 kilometers per hour about 40, 50 years ago. Now, the latest that hit us was 230 kilometers per hour. Fortunately, it only hit
3
us
times
on the
more.
northern tip in Babuyan.
Yeah.
At 230, that's like a metal object that runs and ruins forests, habitations, and lives. We lose about, how much do we lose every year of our GNP? 5%, almost 5%. And 5% of GDP, you see our growth is only 6 or 7, so there's nothing left. If this keeps on, if we are not able to abate this, if the world cannot cooperate, then this destruction will impoverish us. We cannot develop. That's why.
So one way of trying to prevent further calamities, you know, or all this destruction because of climate change, then we turn now to renewable energy, cleaner sources of power.
And it's the interesting thing. It's really not just an environmental issue, as the senator has pointed out. It is an economic issue in the very first place, and it's a social issue as well. And I'm going to explain very briefly why.
Please.
Through the impacts of climate change, you're not only going to have more extreme and a higher number of storms and floods, you obviously destroy infrastructure, you destroy farming. So this has a direct impact. And on the other hand, again, that's the dramatic impacts that are going to happen if we don't change course. But on the positive hand, the Philippines currently pay about 10% of every dollar that's being made, 10% are being paid for the import of fossil fuels. So every dollar of GDP, every 10th dollar of GDP is being sent out of the country, while you have tremendous domestic resources here in this country that you could use, that are freely available. Of course, you need to. It's not going to be that easy.
Of
I'm not
course,
going to.
yes. You also have to invest.
You have to
in
invest,
right.
and it costs a lot of money. But I would argue that it's a good investment that will pay out relatively quickly, not just for future generations, well for the generations that are alive now. And it will have a very positive impact on the economy. We can continue. We'll create jobs. We can talk about innovation. You know, these are the technologies of the 21st century. Coal is a technology of 200 years ago.
Right,
you
the
know.
dinosaurs.
It's the dinosaurs. And you know, the 10% that is being paid for the import of fossil fuels is just the start, because what it does not include is, yes, the future cost of climate change, but also the local air and water pollution that needs to be cleaned up, the healthcare costs, that
Yes.
those are very real costs that our societies pick up, and there's a much smarter way to develop economically, socially, and environmentally.
All these problems are just piling up one on top of each other. So really, you have to have this focus on how to get out of this rut, I would call it, right? And replace it with cleaner technology.
The good thing is we're in the middle of a paradigm change. Governments, including the senator and many of his colleagues, have understood now what this is about. It is really now about finding the concrete solutions to it.
All right.
And I would argue that we can't longer argue that it's a luxury good, you know, that only the rich can afford. The truth, and my institute has those numbers available for anybody who wants to see them. The truth of the matter is that what we cannot afford is just to continue the way we're doing it. That is the luxury. So I think we have the solutions at hand, and it's now about making them happen.
So in the institute, how do they access information from your institute? So they go to a website?
You can Google Worldwatch Institute.
Worldwatch Institute.
And if you Google it, it's going to pop up. It's, you know, as you've pointed out, it's one of the oldest institute. I think we're the oldest kid on the block in terms of environmental organizations, or one of the oldest worldwide. We're turning 40 next year. And it's all, you know, we invest a lot of time into not producing just expert knowledge. That's why I'm on your show. You know, not just producing expert knowledge for a small number of people who, many of them already know what's going on, for a small number of experts. But my institute is really, we're trying to do what we call a sandwich strategy. So
Sandwich.
a sandwich, like a sandwich you bite into. You know, if you bite into a sandwich, the delicious part is always in the middle. Right? The rest is just the bun that holds the thing together.
Yes.
So we're trying to come from the top and work with governments and having them see what's in it for their country, what's best for their people. But at the same time, we're trying to build really a bottom-up movement. So if you go to our website and you try to find the information, you will find it, and you will find it in a way that everybody can understand. It's not just numbers and complicated issues. We're trying to write. We're trying to really write in a way that people understand. We're showing little films on YouTube. So we're trying to find a way to reach the
YouTube,
people.
you also type in Worldwatch, and it will pop up.
Yes, and if you type in Worldwatch Philippines, then we'll find an article that the center and I wrote together, which was here in the Philippines press,
but
and a number of other things.
More than that, they stay focused on a problem. For instance, our pathway towards clean energy will be plucked out from the experiences we have begun with 5 provinces and then 20 provinces.
Okay.
And his institute will look at the barriers. They call it barriers, but challenges.
All right.
For instance, the first challenge is technology. What kind of technology do you bring in for if you want to have
certain region?
Yeah, the wind, the solar systems, the solar panels, and then the other really difficult problem is resource or money. Money that can be gotten out of institutions outside the country for lesser cost, and sometimes foundations. They link you to foundations so that you can tap brains, which cost a lot if you did have the support from a global and respected institutions like Worldwatch. So we're very grateful for everything, for defining and making it clear. For instance, in the first 5 provinces, we'd be able to create a complex,
Yep.
perhaps coming from geothermal, coming from wind, coming from sun, and then this mix of energies will enable us to graduate from dirty coal or dirty fossil to clean and healthful energy sources. And we call it the pathway. It's pathway. They're pathway leaders, and they also help us raise the funds.
We hope
No, but
so.
I'm sure all this, the IMF, the ADB, the Asian Development Bank, they're very much concerned because, you know, it affects, it crosses borders. It's what's happening in Mexico, the flooding, even
Yeah.
in Europe. So it's really
Well,
a global issue.
They come around, but it takes a long time. These are, you know, multi-billion-dollar institutions. They are
Ah.
tankers. They're not little speedboats. You know? They
Okay.
don't turn the wheel, and they, you know, it takes a while for them to move away from what they have supported for many years, which is basically a fossil-fueled industry.
Okay.
So this takes time, but I give most of them a lot of credit really for trying, and I think it's similar to national governments. It is it is increasingly, I should say, being understood that the pathway we are on is the wrong one, and that there's a much better one, and everyone, including the international institutions, obviously have a responsibility for it.
Well, like you just mentioned about that sandwich image, you know, like, yeah, you're working with the top decision makers, right? But under also, after you have made the pathway, then you educate people on how to go about, you know, doing their own contribution.
Yeah, we are where we are not because somebody sat down 50 years ago and said, like, you know, how can I come up with a really ridiculous system, you know, and so let's create this, you know, it's dirty and it costs the people a lot and it kills a lot of people every year.
No.
We are where we are for a reason, you know, and some of the technologies that I mentioned before, wind, solar, geothermal, if you go half a century back, they were developed already, but they were very, very costly compared to fossil fuels. Today it's the other way around. You know.
Right, yeah.
Today these are the technologies that are better for societies, including cheaper for our societies. So what has happened is, and that's why social entrepreneurship is important, why political leadership is important, and why it's important to bring the people on it. What has happened is there are vested interests now, of course, in the system as it is today. And we need to work with these people, but we also have to put pressure on the people. And this is why we're not just working with a small number of people in government
Right.
who are often our allies, like the senator, but also reach out to media. This is why I'm on this program. Reach out to really try to have the ordinary person in the street understand this, so that they put up pressure, so that we transition to a system that's better for themselves. You know.
All right.
We are the third most vulnerable, but this is not a local problem. We won't be able to solve this unless it's solved globally. So a global institution like theirs is really very, very relevant. They can pluck out experiences and bring them here to the Philippines. Experience from India, which is a vast country, and they're also advising institutions in India. Experience in small island countries like those islands, in Tobago, Trinidad, and how they change their fuel systems. In those countries, they have used a lot of coal, but they're now gradually shifting to the point where they're using more
Cleaner
clean
energies.
energy than coal, until finally they will hit zero. That experience is something we can use here because we use about 60% of fossil fuel, dirty fossil fuel. So we can have cleaner energy. It will turn out to be a much cheaper source because they're indigenous. Water is abundant. We're surrounded by oceans or arms of disease. And we have geothermal. Because they're indigenous and locally available, we don't have to import. As Dr. Ochs said, we use 10% of our GDP.
Yes.
10% could be our growth. And then you create a lot of investment, you create a lot of jobs.
When in fact, like Dr. Ochs just mentioned, that we have the solar, we have the wind, we have the geothermal resources.
biomass. You know, you have a lot. It's a country that in many parts, in many provinces, is mostly being built on agriculture. You know, if we grow something, why do we throw most of it out? You know, we only eat a very small portion of what we produce, but that can all be fired up, and it can all produce energy, and you have it coming every year. Every season, you're going to produce your own energy. You know, why?
Those are the renewable sources of energy.
It's another renewable resource because it has first taken the carbon out of the air to grow. Every plant needs carbon to grow, and then it's a cycle that doesn't produce any additional carbon. So, you know, my wish is, if I may say this, that, you know, first of all, I want to say I'm not with a company that's trying to make money with this. You know, we're a non-for-profit. If I wanted to make money, I would work in the private sector. I'm in this to make a change, and I'm in the Philippines. One, because I've been invited by the senator to help him create this transition and create this change. But two, because I truly believe we need some global champions. We need some countries worldwide, and within the countries, it starts with a few champions that take the time to understand this and to start producing the change and convincing others that this is the right way to develop. And obviously, you will understand this. A country like Saudi Arabia, you know, I have friends in Saudi Arabia, but obviously it is more difficult for a country like Saudi Arabia that has abundant resources of oil, petroleum, gas to transition than a country like the Philippines that one is, again, very threatened by climate change, so has an interest in showing that a different development path is possible to others in the hope that they will follow it, and two, has really an economic incentive instead of importing from Saudi Arabia or from Australia, you know, showing that it can produce its energy domestically and by itself in a clean way.
All right. So, well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me this evening. And I do hope that those our viewers out there who like to get, you know, more information, they can go to the website of Worldwatch, right? And again,
website, climate,
the website, climate change.
My website,
yes,
too.
Yes, your website is climate change.
Heherson Alvarez at yahoo.com. Alvarez Heherson at yahoo.com.
All right. Okay. So thank you, gentlemen, again, for sparing us your precious time here.
Thank you for
to our
having
viewers
us.
out there, I hope you enjoyed the issues that we discussed on climate change and renewable energy. So good night and see you next week at Icons and Circles. This is Consul Aneta Blanc.